Hello everyone, I'm Out 1976 and I'm back again with another crap game. Today I'll be looking at Pit Fighter on the Super Nintendo. Now, let's start off with the arcade version first. Pit Fighter is not a particularly good game. It's the first game ever to have digitised actors. It was released by Atari in 1990 on the arcade. It's a very basic sort of fighting game. You pick one of the three fighters. Buzz is a wrestler, Ty a kickboxer, and Kato is a karate expert. I'm just assuming he's a karate expert because it says he's a third degree black belt, but it doesn't actually say what sort of martial arts he does. So it's either karate or kung fu. Anyway, the game is very basic, like I said before. At the time it was impressive because of the digitised sprites and the sprite scaling. And you can have this game up to 3 players simultaneous on the arcade, but it's not a particularly fun game. It's quite boring, it's badly animated, and it's, as I said before, it's not particularly good. It's definitely not a game that I'd recommend, but at the time when it came out, I mean it was quite successful because that was before Street Fighter 2 was out, so there wasn't really that many decent fighting games, and because of the graphics people liked it. Anyway, obviously it got home computer ports and ports to different systems, you know, 16-bit and 8-bit, so most of them are appalling. But let's be fair, the game was shit in the first place, so what do you expect really? And it weren't until the Super Nintendo came out when THQ converted it to that, which was really bad, as you shall see later on the footage that I recorded for the Super NES version. Now, as you can see in this video, you can use different weapons and other things that are in the background like boxes and throw them at your opponents. It's still a basic game, you know, you fight a couple of fighters and you go on to like a bonus bit where you fight yourself, but you've got to be the first one to get 3 knockdowns or something. I think I recorded that bit on this video. It's after I fight this guy. But the game is very basic, as I said before. It looks a mess, the animation is pretty shitty really. But being as it was the first game of its type, you know, people was impressed by it. At the time I remember thinking it was pretty good. I even bought the Mega Drive version years later. Well, not years later actually. I think about a year later, because there wasn't really that many fighting games on the Mega Drive that was that good. I mean, this is before obviously Street Fighter 2 come out on any of the consoles, you know, it weren't even out on the Snes then. Right, anyway, on to the grudge match. Let's say it's the first one to knock the other opponent down in 3 times, you know, it's simple. And then you go on to other fighters, and there's not really a lot to say about this game. It's pretty crap, you know, pretty basic, run-of-the-mill fighting game, really. It's just the graphics what made it popular. Which it doesn't have the same popularity nowadays, you know. Obviously it hasn't aged badly. Anyway, here's a SNES version by THQ, and you'll notice that the intro has been completely removed, which was a pretty good feature on the arcade version. The graphics now look shitty. There's no sprite scaling. If you try and play the game properly, you know, actually trying to fight them, they can pretty much kill you straight away. I mean, this is the first guy I'm fighting here and he's beating the shit out of me. It's not playable. It's rubbish. There you go, dead. Instantly, pretty much. What a great fighting game that is. And the biggest joke about this was, at the time when this came out, you could already get Street Fighter 2 for the SNES, so what the fuck was THQ thinking of even porting this, even if they did a decent version? But I mean, this version's appalling. No continues neither. So they expect you to complete the whole game on 1 credit. Well, there's a thing with this game that all you've got to do is just hammer the punch button pretty much. You can just beat most people on it. But it's not fun. It's rubbish. And especially when you take into account that Super NES games were expensive. I mean, on import, some of them were like 65 quid or something. So if you spent 65 quid on this shit, you'd be pretty pissed off. Obviously, I didn't, because I knew that, you know, the game wasn't very good in the first place. And obviously, when I had my Super NES, I only bought it for Street Fighter 2. I didn't give a fuck about Pit Fighter. But THQ originally, and every single game they did, they completely ruined. I mean, there was like a touch of death for most Super NES games. You know, they did classics like Home Alone and other rubbish like that. But one thing I will say is, years later, they did do some decent games before they went bankrupt. Anyway, that's enough from me. Thanks for watching. More videos coming soon.
Things like this, things like that.
It's all good in the long run.